George, thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, British Farming Awards, it's such a huge event for the Farmers Guardian, celebrating the best of British agriculture. What do you love about the British Farming Awards, George?
Well, I think it's just absolutely fantastic to have an opportunity for everybody to come together to have a night where the issues of individual businesses, issues with the industry can be just put on one side for a moment, and we can just celebrate together all that's good about the industry, all that's good about the community within which we are working, and to celebrate those people who are really making a big difference for our sector.
George, you have won the Outstanding Contribution to Agriculture Award at the BFAs this week. Obviously, such a huge accolade. How do you feel?
Oh, Rachel, I was just completely gobsmacked when I found out that I'd been awarded this, tremendously brilliant and generous award. It's just unbelievable to think someone like me could be in that position. And I've been with the TFA for nearly 27 years, and obviously I've been working in other bits of the industry, and you try every day to make a difference to the members that you're involved with, for the industry as a whole. And it's some days it's hard just to make sure that you keep on putting one foot in front of the other. You have successes, you have knockbacks. So yeah, it was really, really lovely, and I was so thankful for that recognition. It's just unbelievable.
And I think it's thoroughly deserved, George. You've been this driving force for the tenanted farming sector. Looking back over the years, you've been at the TFA for, plus 20 years, 27 years. What would you say were your biggest achievements over that time?
So I think it's the things that you don't see if you are in the industry. So one of the things that I think we've been very successful at is protecting those tenants who have been occupying under secure Agricultural Holdings Act agreements. There have been many times in my years with the TFA where the security of those individuals on the old style tenancies has been under attack, be that from government or from other organizations, and we've had to be routinely on the ball to ensure that those protections are still there. But obviously, the newer entrants to our industry are going to be having farm business tenancies. And most recently, I was really chuffed that the government took on board our suggestion that there should be a working group into how we secure the future resilience of the sector. And Baroness Kate Rock chaired a review group, and that report that she produced is now the agenda for change that the government is taking forward. So we're trying to protect those people who have rights, have property rights, but also provide a resilient future for those individuals who are coming into our great industry.
And George, you referenced the Baroness Rock review there. Do you feel like action is going to be taken from that? Do you feel confident about the kind of future action points from that review?
Yeah, what's really good, Rachel, is that there's cross-party support for the Rock review. And it was really encouraging, for example, to hear Sir Keir Starmer reference the Rock review in speeches that he has been making on agricultural policy, and also in publications that he has been writing. He's been referencing the Rock review. So it's good from our perspective that the leader of the opposition is also understanding the needs of the tenanted sector. Certainly, the current government has got its head around the recommendations of the report. We have the Farm Tenancy Forum taking forward the recommendations there, and I'm meeting regularly with ministers and with officials in Downing Street to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire and in getting those recommendations into play. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we can't relax. There's a lot of work to do, and we're using that report as our manifesto for change.
You said there's a lot of work to do. You must be in a very stressful job, relentless job, and you said at the beginning there, putting one foot in front of the other all the time, and just kind of maintaining that positivity for the tenanted farming sector and for the members. But there must be some challenging days, and how do you kind of cope with that?
Yeah, there are challenging days, and one of the things that I'm very open about is my Christian faith. I've been a follower of Jesus since I was 13, and every day, I couldn't do this job without having that grounding in my faith, and people around me who are also people of faith just supporting me in that. But but equally, Rachel, I feel the eyes of my members in the back of my head on a daily basis, and they have given me an awesome responsibility and an awesome privilege to be their advocates, and I'm grateful for every one of them who has put their trust in me and the TFA to be that advocate, and I get to go to places that they will never get to go, and I get to speak to people that they will never speak to, and it behoves me to ensure that I'm carrying their message and what they want to see going forward. So that's what drives me on a daily basis within my work, that we have members who are desperately looking for answers to the issues that they're facing on a daily basis, and I'm there as that conduit between them and the government or their landlord or the sector to try and move those forward.
It's clear that obviously representing those tenant farmers is something that's a real passion of yours and what drives you every day. When you have those little wins, for example, the Sturdy family, that was a huge win for the tenant farming sector last week. That obviously gives you that extra motivation.
Absolutely. And, it was really lovely because we've been with the Sturdys on their journey for the past 3 years as they've been waiting for this decision to be made by the planning department. And there are days when they felt it wasn't going to go their way, when we felt that it wasn't going to go their way, but we continued to plug away at making sure that we made the arguments that were necessary to ensure that the planning authority made the right decision. And on that day, I sadly couldn't be with them in Yorkshire when the planning committee was taking place, but I followed it on the online stream. And I mean, just to see Emma Sturdy break down in tears when the announcement was made, it was 10-4.
So much sheer emotion, wasn't there?
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah.
And she sent me an email which just had 2 words: "We won." And you think, yes, that's absolutely fantastic. And to listen to her and to speak to Rob, and to feel that relief that they've got, they're so generous in terms of saying, well, look, this isn't just for us. This is for all tenant farmers in the sector. And yes, of course, we have to wait to see whether Harmony Energy will decide to appeal. But for now, that we were very grateful to the planning committee for the very brave decision it made.
And I think within your role, naturally, you build that kind of emotional attachment to people's stories. It's inevitable that will happen. Some of these disputes or problems and challenges that tenant farmers are facing can go on for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got people that we've been helping for years and years and years through issues. It's very rare that you get an issue that a member raises with you and you can get it resolved in a week or a month. It's so debilitating for individuals when they have an issue that's so fundamental to their family, to their mental health, to their business, to their future. It is about making sure that they see there is another day, there is tomorrow, and making sure that they get through that. So yeah, it's making sure that every day we are walking step by step with our members.
And obviously what came from the Sturdy family's case was very much that value of tenant farmers, and they shouldn't be overlooked. More than half of the agricultural sector is tenanted farmers. For you, George, what is so special about tenant farmers? Why is it so important that we protect their future?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why we should be worried about the tenanted sector of agriculture and why other people should be worried about the tenanted sector of agriculture. So firstly, it provides liquidity to the most fixed factor of production in our industry, which is land. Land is a very expensive and scarce asset. And when you look at the amount of land that changes hands by sale and purchase, it's tiny. But the tenanted sector provides that opportunity for people to acquire land in a relatively straightforward way by paying an annual rent for it. So it makes the system of agriculture work and work well. I think secondly, it combines those individuals who are asset rich but lack the entrepreneurial flair to farm that land effectively with those people who have the drive and the enthusiasm and the economic wherewithal to take those businesses forward, but lack the asset. So bringing those two people together, those two individuals together, can create benefit for both parties. And we are about creating benefit for both parties. This is not about us just wanting to fly the flag for the tenant farmer. For every tenant farmer needs a landlord, and we want landlords to be as successful as tenants are in terms of this business going forward. Also, it's the route in for new entrants. It's the principal way that we see individuals coming into the sector from outside of the industry. And I think the recent CAAV, the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers report, suggests that around 11% of new tenancies go to new entrants. And interestingly, about 37% of situations where there's a change in occupier is to a new entrant on a tenancy. So tenancies offer that route in for individuals. But also, as you say, it's a huge sector. The land in the sector is about 30% of the total area of the country. If you take also those handshakes, those twilight zone agreements, it probably goes up to about 40%. But the Rock Review suggested that we're nearly 70% of land was being farmed by a tenant farmer, because obviously some tenant farmers have land that they own or land that they farm under some other agreements or under common land agreements. So yeah, it's a huge sector, and obviously our food security, our environmental security relies upon a lot of tenant farmers being able to have successful and thriving businesses.
I'm interested to find out a bit more about your own background, George, and what you knew about agriculture before you came into the TFA, and how kind of your knowledge and experience has progressed over the years and developed. And was there anything surprising that you found about being within the agricultural industry?
So, I was very much an urban individual. So I was born and bred in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And when I went off to university, I was really interested in economics. Economics was what I was driving to do. But I wasn't really interested in banking and finance and all that. I wanted it to be something a bit more relevant, if you like, to the common man or the common woman. And it was around that time that, I don't know, the Times newspaper used to do sort of week-long investigations into a particular issue, and they did a week-long investigation into the common agricultural policy, and I thought that's really interesting. And I got really interested in agricultural
Not many people
economics.
would say that, George.
Yeah, I know. Well, as someone who was looking to go into economics as an academic endeavor, and it really, I thought, well, I got to understand there was something called agricultural economics, which was interesting. So I applied to university to do agricultural economics, went to Nottingham, did a joint honors there, and then I really had a driving passion for international development. And I began to sort of knock on a few doors to that end. And my master's degree at Reading University was in tropical agricultural development, because I thought I was going to go and save Africa. And then I realized not long after my master's degree that Africa didn't want to be saved by me. It was quite happy to do it by itself. And I applied for a role within the civil service as a government economist in the Ministry of Agriculture. So I started my career as a government economist in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, which is now DEFRA, in Whitehall in London. And I was doing stuff on, the first environmentally sensitive area agreements, the farm diversification grant scheme, the 5-year set-aside scheme, which is all people that will be well older than you, Rachel, will remember. And I ran the Farm Business Survey for a bit there, and then in an idle moment I saw an advert for the Country Landowners Association, who were looking for a rural economics advisor, and I thought, well, I'll put my hat in the ring, thinking I wouldn't get anywhere near a job with the CLA. And weirdly, they invited me to interview. Weirdly, they offered me a job, so I worked for them for 4 years in Belgrave Square, and doing stuff on CAP, on forestry policy, and a whole wide range of things. And then a chance conversation put me in touch with the then chairman of the TFA, a lovely guy called Reg Hayden, who has sadly passed on, but he was a really passionate guy for the tenanted sector, was our chairman for a very long time. And at the age of 29, he asked me to be the chief executive of the TFA, and I've never looked back since. So it's been a bit of a journey.
I'm gonna say definitely, but all kind of naturally led down that route.
Yeah, but maybe now, having been here 27 years, I've reached I've reached the level of my incompetence. Yeah,
You mentioned the word passion there, of the former chief exec,
yeah.
and obviously that is a value that you have as well, George. But what other values do you feel you have to have as someone that is a chief executive of the TFA?
So you've got to be people got to be able to trust you, and we have members who put a lot of trust in us for stuff that they tell us and stuff that they share with us. And not just about the businesses. I speak to members. I've got members that speak to us about family issues and about their own mental health issues and their own fears and worries and concerns. So trust is a really big a big part, and also trust in how you lobby and how you present evidence to government, because there's no point in making things up and just saying things for the sake of it. Things have got to be evidence, and things have got to be real, and things have got to be absolutely on the money. So I pride myself on those guys that I do have to lobby, be they government ministers or officials or civil servants. They know that when they speak to me that I'm coming with real issues rather than stuff that is just a campaigning issue that doesn't have any substance. It doesn't have any. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So trust is a big element. Resilience. Yeah. I mean, you need resilience, and you need to have broad shoulders here, because we don't get everything right, and there are people who will tell you pretty quickly when they think you've got it wrong. And we learn more from people who disagree with us than people who agree with us. So taking that as a positive and making sure that you try and understand why they think like that and what they are trying to say, and then to really see how you should be, changing your direction or changing what you do, if relevant in relation to what they're saying. But you need a certain amount of resilience for that, and perseverance. That idea of putting one foot in front of the other. So Rome wasn't built in a day, and you do need just to make sure that you are relentlessly pursuing the goals that you need to pursue in a good way.
No, definitely. And you mentioned kind of the mental health side of things, and there are a lot of challenges facing the tenanted sector right now in particular, and it is a concerning time, people would say, looking ahead for the next 5 years. Dealing with that side of things, you mentioned that people pick up the phone, and sometimes it's just having a reassuring voice on the other end of the phone. How have you coped with that? And would you say over the last few months or last few years that kind of has increased?
I think the mental health issues, Rachel, have always been there in the industry. I think it's really good now that they are being talked about more and recognized more than they have been, because people felt unable to share how they were feeling previously, unless they had a really trusted relationship. And I had a time as a trustee of the Farming Community Network, and I chaired FCN for 5 years as well. So I saw firsthand exactly what a organization can do to help people who are in real difficulty. But the pastoral care that we provide to our members is huge, and every day, me and my advisors and my team are talking to people who just need that voice to talk to. And a couple of examples. I remember a guy that called me one day, and he just said, "George, I'm going to say 3 things to you, and I don't want you to answer at all. I'm just going to tell you what I want to tell you." And he said, "My wife has just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Oh. Secondly, my daughter has just been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh gosh.
And thirdly, my cattle have just gone down with TB." And then he put the phone down, and that was the end of the call. And he just wanted to get those 3 things off his chest. Now, what do I do with that as a call? So I respected his wish not to say anything on the call, but of course I called him back.
Yeah.
And I left it 20 minutes, called him back, and we had a really good conversation with him. Not about tenancy issues, not about anything particular, but just about where he was in his head. And he was grateful for the call back. but also, we sadly we have lost people to suicide, and it's a big wrench when that happens. And my first loss to suicide was back in 2021 during Foot and Mouth. A young girl called Jo White, quite locally to where we are here in Reading, in her mid-30s, who we were helping through some issues. We thought that we had got her through those issues, and then we learned that she had taken her own life because she couldn't take what she'd done, or what had happened to her livestock. And that was, I don't beat myself up about that, because obviously she made her own decision, but it inspires me every day to go the extra mile to ensure that people can see there is a tomorrow, and that's a really, really important aspect of the work that we do.
That must have been a very challenging time, but like you say, kind of gives you that extra
absolutely
to kind of go that extra mile. When we look to the future, and the future of the tenanted farming sector, I've already alluded to it already, but there are significant challenges that the tenanted farmers are facing right now. But where do you see the future, George? And do you feel optimistic about it? Obviously, there are challenges, but where do you see that kind of next few months, but also looking further ahead over the next couple of years?
Yeah, Rachel, I'm really optimistic, and you would expect me to say that, wouldn't you? Yeah. about the tenanted sector. But the reason why I'm so optimistic is we talked about the ROC review and the report there and the recommendations there. But I mean, you listen to any government announcement or any speech by a minister, or you look at any policy paper that comes out now, it always now references the tenanted sector and making sure that the tenanted sector is included in the discussions around development. Now, that wasn't the case a few years ago. The tenanted sector was almost a Cinderella sector. It was forgotten. Policymakers, I remember.
Why do you think it was forgotten? Sorry to interrupt there, George, but you think it's more, it was just a naivety, and the general perception is farming is landowners, and actually tenants are very, very small part, so why should we care? Do you think it was that naive?
No, I think there's a sort of an unwritten assumption in the head of a lot of people who don't really know our industry very well, who think that a farmer is always an owner-occupier, that they own their own land. It's been in their family for generations. This sort of mindset that that's what a farmer is. And even within DEFRA, when you talk to people within DEFRA, they get surprised that there is such a thing as a tenant farmer. So, and other types of land occupation, grazing licenses, common land, contract farming, the whole gamut of how you acquire and use land. It's sometimes it's a complete eye opener to policymakers. And I had a conversation with somebody quite senior in DEFRA recently who said, he is still coming across bits of DEFRA which don't understand that there is a tenanted sector, so I think now that it's front and center, and the needs and aspirations of the tenanted sector are very much in the minds of policymakers going forward. But also, when I started with the TFA back in '97, trying to get people to consider coming into this industry was a real struggle. Even individuals who were sons and daughters of existing farmers were not wanting to come into the industry. Now there's a whole raft of people of all shapes and sizes and diversities who want to come into the industry, which is absolutely fantastic. But as I alluded to earlier, land is a very expensive asset. So we will need tenanted land to get those people into our industry, to bring those ideas, to bring that enthusiasm. And I think the government and the opposition get that. And we've had the Treasury looking at the taxation framework to encourage more secure tenancy. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good things going forward, but we temper that with issues of concern around the loss of land to things like woodland planting, the loss of land to the new biodiversity net gain requirements for planning, or the loss of land to nutrient neutrality schemes against house building, or the loss of land to vanity schemes like rewilding, which don't really deliver a lot for society, but there's a lot talked about that. So again, we have to be resolutely on the case to ensure that we are making every day the case that we need a resilient and vibrant tenanted sector going forward. And
those points that you make towards the end there, that they are huge concerns for farmers right now, and there are pressing issues that they are worried about in terms of land use changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to know what the balance is here. So for example, if you take tree planting, we don't want our members to go broad acre tree planting, because most landlords won't want them to do that because it will devalue the land. But I mean, surely tenant farmers should have the opportunity to plant hedges and edges and scrubby areas and wet areas and shelter belts and screening. And we could have a massive increase in tree planting if we just took that approach, rather than looking for removing land from the sector completely and allowing it to be broad acre planted. And of course, renewable energy is something that we all need to be pursuing. But the rooftop solar must be the way to go. We've got substantial acres of rooftops on farms and commercial and industrial buildings around the country. Why aren't we looking at that? So we need a proper land use strategy to ensure that all of the things that we need for our country in terms of food security, energy security, and environmental security we can deliver. But sadly, sometimes we just go for these corner solutions, which doesn't benefit us as a society.
No, definitely. It's that balancing act, isn't it? Obviously, you alluded to at the beginning there, in terms of you've been able to meet people that you didn't think you would be able to meet. You've been to events and places which you never thought you would go to. This is always a tricky question, but over the last kind of 27 years, what has been that pinnacle moment within your role and position?
Oh, well, winning the BFA Outstanding Achievement Award, Rachel, for goodness sake, that's been fabulous.
I didn't pay you to say that, George. Just to clarify.
Yeah, I think what this might sound quite twee, but having the privilege of being involved in individual people's lives and sitting in their farm kitchens and seeing them put their trust in me as I help them through their issues, to me, actually, that is the pinnacle. And I know that sounds twee and a bit, weird, but and I think that I had a call a few years ago from a chap who we've been doing a lot with, and a family that we still do a lot with. And unfortunately, he contracted a brain tumor, and he rang me to ask me to speak at his funeral. And I thought, my goodness, here I am, an employee of the Tenant Farmers Association, and he wants me to speak at his funeral. That, to me, that's the pinnacle of what I do. But I've met prime ministers, I've met the king. I've been in with many government ministers. I mean, all of that is good, and it means that the tenant sector is being talked about at the highest levels of government, at the highest levels of society. But it really is, for me, being there with individual members and having the privilege of being their advocate is, to me, the pinnacle.
And going back to that value of trust, which is so important.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a lovely way to end this podcast, George, and massive congratulations again for winning.
Oh, Rachel, thank you so much.
Outstanding contribution to agriculture, thoroughly deserved. So thank you, George. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. You take care.